Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taddy. I'm an astrologer and I make videos on astrology, self-growth, self-care, self-love. So if that interests you, please continue watching, please subscribe. And in this video, I'll be talking about how to self-publish a book, and I'll be using myself as an example. And this will be a more chill sit-down video, conversation, and I'll just be answering some questions that I usually get asked when I first self-published my book, Revisions of the Moon. The link for this is in my bio if you're interested, but I just want to share my personal journey, my perspective, and things I really wish I knew before I self-published, because I think it's really helpful to know this in advance. So yeah, go grab some tea, go grab some coffee. If you want to take notes, you can, but I think this will be more of like what I've learned through the process as well. I usually get asked like, how long did it take me to write my book? And I can't give a definite answer to this. So I started writing my poems maybe about 2-3 years ago, and I wrote them like as an outlet throughout my life, and I wrote a lot in my first relationship. So that was like 10 years ago where I first started to write poetry. So I had a few poems from that time period that I kind of hid on my Tumblr, and I was just making these secret Tumblrs from people, and I just wanted an outlet of like, okay, this is what I feel right now, this is something I have to remember. So I think that was really important for myself. And then I went through another relationship and I started to write more, and that was when I really started to write poetry. So that was about 4 years ago, and actually no, five years ago, I can't remember. Yeah. So in essence, when I actually decided, okay, I really need to, write this poetry book and finish a poetry book, that would be about 6 months of intense writing and editing. So this was me like really trying to focus on it. So this was 6 months of me just really trying to focus on getting this poetry book out, designing it. I did design my own book, so I think that's something to consider too. And that brings me into my other point, is like, how do you do everything yourself? Like, how do you actually manage to publish one by yourself? Because it's called self-publishing for a reason. And I just want to say I did have help. So you can't do everything on your own. You can, it's just a very hard. It's just a lot harder. And I really thought I could do everything myself, but there were certain things that I really needed help on. Like, for example, my poetry book, I had an amazing editor. One of my friends was the editor of my book, and she's amazing. She had a background in English, so I was just so happy to have her and her feedback throughout my poems, because when you're going through a book, you want it to flow, you want it to make sense, you want the sequence to make sense, you want this story, you want a story that paints an image even if you don't have any images. I did have images because I had film photography throughout my book. I'm gonna just show an example. I'm gonna just show a few of the images. So I had like a few film photography images throughout the book. What I really learned through the process of having an editor on my book was I got a different perspective, and I was like, is this actually a good poem? Like, is this actually good? And I really needed honest feedback. I needed honest perspective, because sometimes we can be so concerned with just our own perspective, but if we're able to get someone else's opinion and perspective on things, it just really helps us understand more so what other people might see that we might miss. And I should explain a bit about my background, but I am a graphic designer, I'm a brand strategist, so I did design quite a few books previously. So before I designed my own book, this is a hardcover copy, by the way. So I had a hardcover copy and those are sold out, but I have the softcover copy on Amazon now. And I'll explain how to get onto Amazon soon. So because I had this background in design, I was able to design my book because I really personally wanted to design it. I really wanted that process. A lot of people ask, you know, what's the software I use, and it's InDesign. InDesign's probably one of the best softwares to use for this. Like, I Adobe InDesign, so you would need a membership Adobe subscription for InDesign to use it. There are alternatives to this. So there are other ways you can make your book. You can use Canva, which is a lot cheaper. You can hire a designer because they will understand the typesetting aspect of books, right? And I think it's important to realize this, because if your book is not readable, like if you cannot read your book properly, then no one really wants to buy it or leave it a good review, because a lot of times there are self-published authors and they don't know how to page design their book. And what I mean by page design is, like, you have to make sure it's readable. You have to make sure you can read things really well. It's not like the lines aren't too close together. It's accessibility issues, right? Like, can you actually read this? So that's something to keep in mind when you're self-publishing. And I would just say hire a designer, because also the cover of your book really does make a difference. Unfortunately, people do judge a book by its cover, and for me, it took me quite a while to pick and design the cover of my book. So it's hard. Like, I know that a lot of people don't want to pay a designer to design their book, but I do think it's very much worth the investment, depending on what kind of book you want to put out there. If this is your legacy, if this is your reputation, then why not invest in it? Because that is going to stay with you for the rest of your life. So it's better to have it done really, really well. Like, if you do not have the budget, but you just really want to self-publish, you can also make just really easy ebooks. You can just make a PDF ebook if you do not want a printed version. And this will allow people to download your book, read it on their iPad or Kindle, and this would be very, very easy and simple. So that's also an alternative. There's templates that people have that you can buy. If it's not a book that it's not super personal, but it's a more informational book. It's just about finding what works for you. Like, what I learned from my process is that it was a struggle. It was a really hard thing to do. It was a very hard thing to self-publish a book, and especially because I first made a hardcover copy of my book. So this is why I have this version, which is a hardcover copy, and it's silver embossed. And what I learned from this is that it's expensive. It's expensive to really publish a book. It's very expensive to do a hardcover copy. The only reason I did a hardcover copy is because I wanted it to be a certain way. I wanted it to be beautiful. I wanted this to last a lifetime. I wanted this as my legacy. And I really wanted to design it. So I didn't make any money from the hardcover copy. I just want to say that I lost money for the hardcover copy. So I wanted everyone to know that, because it's something to consider, right? Because it's very expensive to actually print hardcover books, especially if you do small volume books, unless you're with a big publisher, unless there's a whole company who is able to make your books, have a space for you to keep your books. And I just remember I only ordered like 100 copies of my book, and it was just so funny because I had 100 copies of these books in my apartment, and I have a very, very tiny place. I have a super small space. So I was living with books for like a month because I really wanted people to pick it up, and this was during the pandemic, and this was like chaos and everything. But what it taught me was how much work goes into it, and how dedicated I was to giving this book to people, and how dedicated some people were to picking it up too, because people were coming in a pandemic to pick up a poetry book from me. So I think that was just so interesting to me personally. And I just want to describe a bit more of my process, like who else did I hire? Because I did hire technically another, I did have to pay someone for creating my book and making it into an ebook because the file format was different than I was used to as a designer. So I'm used to creating PDFs and interactive PDFs for book design, but I wasn't familiar with the file transfer format that had to go into when you uploaded it onto Amazon. So if you don't know, you can just upload your book onto Amazon and set the price to what you want the book to be. You'll see how much Amazon will take from it, like how much their cost would be, but and you can set the price, but what I learned is that the file format was quite complex in terms of what I had to upload. So I was not used to what that format was. So I had to hire someone from Upwork just to take my design file. So the book was already designed. The book was already completely designed, the interior and everything. So I hired someone from Upwork. They messed up. They messed up the book. It was horrible. They did it for hours. It was like a month process. It was a mess. And the interesting thing is I had to hire someone new. They were able to complete it in like 2 days, whereas this person took a month and they just kept messing up. So it's really important to do your research. I did do research. They had 5-star reviews. They did have 5-star reviews, but this was my Saturn return. If you didn't know, I published this book during my Saturn return. And what it really taught me was good things take time. Good things take time. Stop rushing the process. People will understand. I felt horrible that people had to wait for this book for over a year because my first printers went out of business. They like ghosted me because I had no clue what was happening. So I was like expecting that my book was still happening, but they didn't really tell me. So this was really strange. And then I had to really learn how to like change things. And you know, it's interesting because the spiritual community on Instagram and YouTube, they would say that if there's so much resistance, then you have to change course and you have to like, I don't want to say give up, but there are a lot of moments where there was so much resistance for me publishing my book. And that's normal. I just want to tell you it's normal. It's a new thing. You can't be perfect at the first thing you try to do. You can't be perfect at it, right? And it's better to have support if you can have that support. I remember I tried to make proposals to get a publisher. I tried to do this before I tried to self-publish, but in the end, it just made more sense for me to self-publish because I had my own audience. There were a few small publishers that would have taken over my book. However, because they didn't have the audience I had, I realized that even though my audience is very, very small on YouTube and Instagram and everything, I realized that they would take a large portion of the profits. And then it didn't sit right with me unless I knew that they were able to expand my reach. So I think that's important to consider when finding a publisher, to know that like they have the power to also edit your book. They have the power to say, hey, like, you know, I think that's the main difference between self-publishing and then finding a publisher. They have the power to say, hey, like, can you edit this? Can you change this? And even though I had an editor, and I'm so, so, so grateful for her, there are a few edits where I'm like, no, actually, I prefer it this way. Actually, no, I really, really prefer that I publish it this way. And she respected that because she, like, it was just an easier collaboration because I was self-publishing, right? But if you're publishing through a publisher, they have the final say. If you signed a contract and everything, they have the final say on the book, right? And then you don't own all of those royalties, you don't own everything, right? So it's something really important to consider. And for me, what I value is I value the freedom of doing things your own way. I really, really value doing things your own way because it's just freedom. It's just, I love freedom. So I think that's what prompted me to self publish. And yeah, it was just such a roller coaster to self publish. And the things that I really wish I knew is that it would take longer than you expected it to. And actually putting it up onto Amazon and everything, you can get help for that too. You can also get help from people if you are confused by the formats and everything. I know this is not a technical video, but if there's any specific questions you have about self-publishing, let me know in the comments and I can make a part 2 version of this. So let me know. And yeah, I really think that what I learned from this process is good things take time and it's okay to go through a few versions. I revised my book like so many times. I flipped it. I revised my book so many times and I'm so happy I did. Like everything does happen for a reason because the first edition of my book before like it was going to get printed, it was not good. It was not a good book. Like it was okay, and I'm happy I did so many edits to it. Like I had time to really, really edit it. So I in reality, I thought it only took 6 months of intense time, but I had an extra year because my publisher, they went out of business and then, or I don't know, they quit or something. I don't know what happened to them. They ghosted me and then I had to self-publish. So it took a long time for me to learn how to self-publish on Amazon and all these things. And there are technical videos out there on YouTube, so go search them up. If you need help, like recommendations, let me know in the comments and I could send you links. But I realized like how long it actually took to edit a book, how long it actually took to do things, and how much I needed help with my book. I needed help. I needed someone else there as a sounding board. I needed someone else there to send pages to get a different perspective. I needed help and I was so afraid to ask for help. So don't be afraid to ask for help when self-publishing too. I know it's called self-publishing, but there's a reason why you need like a community to do this. You need more people to actually produce this, right? You can't do everything yourself. And I think that was the thing that has met me with the most resistance in the beginning because I wanted to do everything myself. But I'm so happy I had the help of my amazing editor. I'm gonna link her down below. She's amazing. She's a career coach. And also, if you need help with designing your book, I do design books for a living, so you can check that out down below as well. You can see my portfolio for that. And if you just want to purchase the book as well and to support, and just if you love poetry, then the link for that is down below as well. But yeah, I hope this helped. I really, really hope this sit down video helped at all. And I would just say really take time to really make sure you're happy with your book. In the end, if you're happy with your book, you are going to be the best person to vouch for your book. You're going to be the best person to put your book out there and be like, no, like you should buy this book. You know, you should put it out there, be proud of it, be like, no, this is what I created. This is something I have put into. And the main reason behind my book, to be honest, was because I went through a very, very hard breakup and I needed a way to transform that pain into art because that's what I wanted to take away from that relationship. That's what I wanted to take away from dating for 9 years. Like, I really wanted to take that pain that I experienced and that hurt and that sadness and transmute that pain into like peace and just put something out there, make something meaningful. And I'm so happy I did. It was such a process. Yeah, I think I just really, really wish I knew I could ask for help, that, you know, it takes longer than expected. You can lean on support. You need like a designer, you need an ebook file transfer person, you need an editor, you need to take time and create a schedule for yourself too. I think this is another key tip was I had like certain days that I would actually take time out of my schedule to really focus on my book, and I would have full days where I would just like print out all the pages, outlay them, and just be like, okay, no, like let's sort this out. Let's see how it flows. Let's see how these images flow. And I would ask other people's opinions on this too. I'd be like, hey, does this flow well together? Do these chapters make sense? What is the meaning behind this? What is the meaning behind all these chapters? For example, in my book, I did do the moon phases and what each moon phase represents. So for the new moon, I did do chaos. It represented chaos to me, and I did this for each stage of the moon, so then all the poems would fit into each section, and it just made sense. It just flowed. You could tell like how chaotic the first chapter was in comparison to the last chapter, which was more peaceful, more calm, more loving. So spoiler alert if you're planning to buy the book. Yeah, I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you have more questions about this. I could do a part 2 if you do. And if you'd like to work with me one-on-one on it, then the link for that is down below. If you would just like to join a welcoming, loving, supportive astrology and art-based community, I have a Patreon community, the Moon Sign Creative community. The link for that is down below as well. And if you would just like a birth chart reading from me as well, like I am an astrologer, so I offer one-on-one sessions and I could look deep into your chart and we can just see what's happening for you, what you're experiencing, and whatever you need to process. So the link for that is down below as well. But thank you again for watching, and just know that the universe has your back, and with peace and love, take care.